It was a sunny Saturday afternoon, the smell of grilled meat and the sound of laughter filling the backyard. I had always enjoyed our family barbecues, but that day felt different. My wife Jessica had been distant for weeks. Her smile strained, her conversations clipped. I tried to brush it off, telling myself that maybe she was just stressed with work or the kids. But deep down I knew something was brewing. As our friends chatted and kids ran around, Jessica stood by the grill holding a glass of wine. The moment felt like the calm before a storm. Then she said it, clear and deliberate, cutting through the hum of the gathering. "We have an open marriage." The words hit me like a punch. For a moment I couldn't process them. My mind raced, trying to understand what she meant, how long she had been thinking about this, and why she hadn't even hinted at it before. Guests around us chuckled nervously, sensing tension but unsure what exactly had just transpired. I kept my voice steady, calm on the outside while a storm brewed inside. I turned slowly toward her friend Lauren, who was standing nearby with her usual smirk, the one that always seemed to imply she knew more than she let on. Our eyes met for a second, and in that moment, I understood something Jessica hadn't realized. This wasn't just a casual suggestion. It was a test. Lauren tilted her head, her expression curious, almost playful. Without a word I asked, "And what do you think about that?" She blinked, surprised by my directness. A small laugh escaped her lips, a mix of amusement and disbelief. The tension in the air was palpable. Everyone around us seemed frozen, caught between enjoying the barbecue and watching the drama unfold. But beneath it all, I was already calculating my next move. In my mind, I was dissecting every look, every pause, every subtle gesture, because I had learned long ago that people reveal more in their silence than in their words. Jessica watched us, confused, maybe even a little proud of herself, thinking she had caught me off guard. But she didn't know that I had been paying attention for weeks, noticing the subtle changes in her behavior, the whispered conversations, the unexplained messages on her phone. This open marriage announcement wasn't a surprise. It was the culmination of a story I had already been piecing together. I smiled slightly, letting the calm exterior mask the storm inside. "Interesting," I said, my tone measured and deliberate. "I guess it's good to know where everyone stands." Over the next few minutes, the atmosphere around the barbecue shifted. People tried to make small talk, but every glance in our direction carried subtle tension. Jessica continued to sip her wine, her cheeks slightly flushed, clearly pleased with the ripple of shock she had created. Lauren, however, seemed more cautious now, her playful smirk replaced by curiosity tinged with calculation. I decided to take control of the situation without showing any weakness. I leaned slightly closer to Lauren and spoke quietly, just loud enough for her to hear. "You know, it's always fascinating how people think they can manipulate others when they don't realize the game is already being played." Her eyes widened slightly. A flicker of recognition passed through her gaze. She realized I wasn't reacting emotionally. I wasn't panicking or pleading. I was observing, assessing, and already 3 steps ahead. Jessica, oblivious to the private conversation unfolding, continued entertaining the guests, laughing too loudly at a joke I didn't hear, clearly trying to reclaim her attention. But I had already seen the cracks. Weeks of distance, secretive texts, subtle lies, all pointed to the same truth. This open marriage declaration wasn't just an idea she had. It was a reflection of choices she had already been making without my knowledge. I straightened, returning my attention to Jessica, keeping my voice calm yet steady, filled with an unspoken weight. "You know," I said, "honesty is always appreciated. If we're redefining the rules, I need to know where everyone really stands. No surprises." She looked at me, momentarily thrown by my composure. "I thought we had talked about this before," she said, her tone defensive but unsure. I shook my head slowly. "No, we haven't. And that's the problem." Lauren shifted slightly, subtly observing the interaction, sensing that the balance of power had shifted. The other guests were oblivious, caught up in their own conversations. But Lauren and I shared an unspoken understanding. In every story like this, someone always underestimates the other, and it rarely ends the way they imagine. As the afternoon sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the yard in our quiet suburb outside Charlotte, North Carolina, I realized that this was more than just a moment of embarrassment or tension. This was the point where truths would start to unravel. I had learned over the years that people often reveal their intentions through small, careless details: the sidelong glance, the lingering laugh, the way they avoid certain topics. And I was watching it all, taking note, preparing for the moment when clarity would demand action. By the time dessert was served, I had already formulated a plan. Not to react with anger, not to argue, but to confront the situation with precision. The open marriage announcement wasn't just a challenge. It was an opportunity to see who was loyal, who was deceitful, and who underestimated the consequences of their actions. As the evening wore on, the party began to wind down. Guests said their goodbyes, leaving only a few lingering friends and the faint smell of smoke and grilled food in the air. I took a deep breath, feeling the tension between Jessica and me. A silent storm that had been brewing for weeks, now threatening to break. I turned to her, my expression calm, my voice steady. "Jessica, before we go any further, I need clarity. This isn't just a casual suggestion. You've been distant, secretive, and now this announcement. It all points to decisions you've made without me. I need to know exactly what you mean." Her eyes flickered with a mix of guilt and defiance. I thought we could explore this together. I didn't think it would be such a big deal," she admitted, her voice trembling slightly. I shook my head slowly. "It is a big deal because trust is everything. And trust isn't something you can redefine on a whim." Lauren, standing a few steps behind, caught my eye. She didn't say a word, but the subtle nod she gave was enough. She understood the gravity of the moment and the careful calculation behind my calm exterior. I continued, speaking firmly now with a kind of clarity that leaves no room for misinterpretation. "If this is what you want, then I need to know the full truth. Have you already acted on this idea? Have there been choices made without my knowledge?" Jessica faltered, her eyes darting away, and I could see the truth spilling out in her hesitation. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I thought it was just a conversation." I exhaled slowly, allowing the weight of my disappointment to settle in the air. "A conversation isn't announcing it to everyone at a gathering, Jessica. That's a declaration, and declarations have consequences." I turned once more to Lauren, my tone measured but sharp. "Thank you for keeping me grounded in reality," I said quietly, a subtle acknowledgement of the silent alliance forming. She smiled faintly, recognizing the message. Some things are better seen from the sidelines until the moment is right. By the time we left the backyard, the air had shifted. I didn't yell. I didn't demand explanations. I simply observed, absorbed the truths laid bare, and prepared for what came next. Sometimes the strongest response is not to react, but to see clearly, understand fully, and let actions unfold naturally. As we drove home along the quiet streets of our neighborhood, Jessica sat silently beside me, the weight of her choices finally sinking in. She hadn't expected the calm, precise clarity with which I had handled the situation. And in that silence, I knew one thing with certainty: trust could not be redefined, and boundaries could not be ignored. Some lessons, after all, need to be learned the hard way.